The mahogany-lined conference room of Harrison and Associates felt smaller than I remembered, though nothing had changed since my father's time. The same oil paintings of stern-faced legal pioneers hung on the walls, their golden frames catching the late afternoon sun. The same leather chairs creaked under the weight of expectation. And the same crystal water glasses caught the light, refracting it across faces that hadn't bothered to hide their disdain for me in 15 years. Perhaps it was the crowd of relatives packed inside that made the space feel confined, their designer suits and pearl necklaces unable to mask their barely contained hunger. Aunt Margaret in her Chanel, Uncle Richard sporting his new Rolex, Cousin Rachel draped in Gucci, all of them dressed for what they thought would be their moment of triumph. I watched them from my seat at the end of the long conference table, noting how they clustered in their usual alliances. James, my older brother, stood by the window in his $1,000 suit, probably calculating how much of our father's estate he could siphon away before anyone noticed. He'd always been good with numbers, especially when they benefited him. Before we begin, Uncle Richard adjusted his watch with practiced nervousness, his voice carrying that familiar patronizing tone. Shouldn't we wait for proper legal representation for all parties? These matters can be quite complicated. Aunt Margaret's perfectly manicured hand found my shoulder, her red nails digging in slightly as she patted with fabricated concern. Dear, do you need help finding a lawyer? These matters can be so complex, especially for someone with your limited experience. I smoothed my simple black dress, not designer but perfectly tailored, and let the silence stretch. Around the table, cousins whispered behind manicured hands, my siblings exchanged knowing smirks, and Uncle Richard continued his performance of faux concern. Poor dear doesn't even have a lawyer, he whispered to Aunt Margaret loud enough for everyone to hear. Always was the family disappointment. Couldn't even manage to keep a proper job. The family lawyer, Mr. Bennet, caught my eye from across the table. He'd served Harrison and Associates for 30 years and unlike the others he knew exactly what was coming. His slight nod was all I needed. I stood up slowly, savoring the moment like a fine wine. Actually, as managing partner of Harrison and Associates, I'll be handling the estate myself. Mr. Bennet's voice cut through the sudden silence. Yes, ma'am. The room froze. Uncle Richard's Rolex caught the light as his hand stopped mid-gesture. Aunt Margaret's pearls clicked against each other as she swallowed hard. James turned from the window so quickly he nearly tripped over his Italian leather shoes. That's impossible, James stuttered, his carefully maintained composure cracking. Harrison and Associates has been in the family for generations. Dad would never sell it. I finished for him, enjoying how the color drained from his face. He didn't. I bought it 3 years ago when the firm was quietly facing bankruptcy after your creative accounting, James. Those numbers you were so good with? I was better. Mr. Bennet opened his briefcase with practiced efficiency, producing documents bound in blue leather. Ms. Harrison acquired controlling interest through a series of private holdings. The transition was completed last quarter. All perfectly legal, I assure you. But you're not even a lawyer. Cousin Rachel protested, her voice rising an octave, her designer bracelet jangling as she gestured wildly. You're nothing. You disappeared after college, never amounted to anything. Harvard Law, class of 2018. Top of my class. I smiled, reaching for one of the crystal water glasses. Though you might have missed that during the family gatherings you stopped inviting me to. It's amazing how much one can accomplish when nobody's watching. Dad knew about this? James demanded, stalking toward the table. This is impossible. He would have told us. Who do you think suggested the sale? I turned to Mr. Bennet. Shall we proceed with the reading? I believe we have some interesting discoveries ahead, particularly regarding the family trust accounts. The silence that followed was worth every late night of law school, every ignored invitation, every whispered insult at family functions. Worth every moment spent building my plan while they built their assumptions. Before we begin, I added, watching their faces with the satisfaction of a chess master revealing checkmate, perhaps we should discuss the audit findings of the family trust? The one you've all been drawing from so creatively? I believe Uncle Richard's recent yacht purchase might need some explaining. Uncle Richard's face went pale. Aunt Margaret's pearls clicked faster against her collarbone. James gripped the back of his chair until his knuckles went white. Sometimes the best revenge isn't served cold. It's served with impeccable legal documentation and a Harvard law degree they never saw coming. These documents can't be real, James sputtered, rifling through the audit papers with trembling hands. His expensive fountain pen clattered to the table, leaving an ink stain on his French cuff. This is some kind of trick. I pulled up the conference room's hidden projection screen with a quiet hum. The family's financial misdeeds appeared in high-resolution glory, each transaction meticulously documented. Shall we start with the Cayman Islands accounts, dear brother? Or perhaps Aunt Margaret's creative use of the Children's Education Fund? Aunt Margaret's perfectly composed facade cracked. Those withdrawals were authorized. By whom? I interrupted, clicking to the next slide. Your forged signatures don't quite match Dad's. Expert analysis confirms that. Page 47 of the report if you're interested. Uncle Richard stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. Now see here, young lady. That's managing partner Harrison to you, Uncle. I pulled up another document. Speaking of which, how's that yacht? The one purchased with embezzled client funds? He's the day. Clever name. The SEC found it particularly amusing. The color drained from his face as his precious Rolex caught the light. Behind him, Cousin Rachel's designer purse slipped from nerveless fingers. You've been watching us, James accused, realization dawning. All these years. While you thought I was failing? I smiled. I was learning. Building evidence. Following money trails. It's amazing what people will reveal when they think you're beneath their notice. Mr. Bennet cleared his throat. Perhaps this would be a good time to discuss the terms of surrender? Surrender. Aunt Margaret's pearls clicked frantically. This is preposterous. We'll fight this. I clicked to the next slide. Surveillance photos, bank statements, offshore accounts. 5 years of damning evidence filled the screen. With what money? Your accounts were frozen an hour ago. Those emergency funds you hid? The properties you transferred to shell companies? Now under court supervision. Dad would never allow this, James protested weakly. He built this firm. And watched you nearly destroy it, I countered. Who do you think kept me updated on your schemes? Those late-night meetings you thought were about his health? We were planning this. Together. The door opened. A team of forensic accountants and federal agents filed in silently, taking positions around the room. Dad always said the firm needed a surgeon's touch, I continued, enjoying their growing horror. Someone who could cut out the cancer without killing the patient. Guess which role you played? You can't prove, Uncle Richard began. Actually, Mr. Bennet interrupted, producing more documents. She can. Your father was quite thorough in his documentation. Shall I read from his sworn statement? I watched my family crumble, their designer armor useless against the weight of truth. Cousin Rachel started crying, mascara tracking down her perfectly contoured cheeks. James slumped in his chair, his arrogance finally shattered. There is, of course, an alternative to criminal charges, I offered, sliding folders across the table. Full confession. Complete restitution. And your immediate resignations from all family business interests. You planned this, Aunt Margaret whispered. All of it. The disappearance, the quiet career, the humble act. I learned from the best, I replied. You taught me how to hide in plain sight. How to smile while sharpening the knife. Consider this your final lesson to me. The federal agent stepped forward, badges glinting. Mr. Bennet began distributing plea agreements with practiced efficiency. One last thing, I added, savoring the moment. Those trust funds you emptied? The ones meant for your children's education? I've spent the last 3 years refilling them. Because unlike you, I understand what family really means. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of defeat, and the quiet satisfaction of justice long delayed but perfectly served. The next morning, the executive floor of Harrison and Associates looked different. Gone were the pretentious modern art pieces Aunt Margaret had insisted on. Gone were James's motivational posters about crushing the competition. Instead, Father's original decor had returned: law books, family photographs from happier times, and his cherished collection of vintage fountain pens. I sat in his old leather chair, reading his private journal. The one he'd kept hidden in the office safe all these years, documenting every betrayal, every scheme, every stolen dollar. My family never realized he'd been playing the long game all along. Your father would be proud, Mr. Bennet said, entering with a stack of newspapers. The headlines screamed about the scandal: Harrison family fraud exposed, and prodigal daughter unveils decades of deception. He knew they'd never suspect me, I replied, touching the journal's worn leather cover. The quiet one. The disappointment. The one who couldn't handle the pressure of corporate law. The morning sun filtered through the bulletproof windows, casting long shadows across the Brazilian rosewood desk. On the security monitors I could see federal agents still combing through the lower floors, boxes of evidence stretching back 20 years. Your cousin Rachel is cooperating, Mr. Bennet reported, settling into a chair. Turned over everything: offshore accounts, shell companies, even the private jets they bought with client funds. She's hoping for leniency. And James, still refusing to sign the confession, claims he can fight it. I smiled, pulling up the secure server on my laptop. Show him this. The screen filled with video footage. James in various high-end restaurants, bragging about his schemes to impress dates. Every word captured by the microcameras in his precious designer watches, gifts from our supposedly senile father. Your father's timing was impeccable, Mr. Bennet mused. Setting this up years ago, positioning you as the hidden piece on the board. A knock interrupted us. My assistant entered with more files. The Singapore accounts have been located, ma'am. And there's someone here to see you. Aunt Margaret stood in the doorway, her Chanel suit wrinkled from a night in federal custody. Her pearls were gone, probably surrendered as evidence. How long? She asked, her voice hoarse. How long were you and Charles planning this? I gestured to the chair across from me. Remember when I had that breakdown after law school? When I supposedly couldn't handle the pressure and disappeared to find myself? She nodded slowly. I was actually in Geneva tracking your hidden accounts. Then Dubai, documenting the property transfers. Tokyo, Hong Kong, Cayman Islands. Everywhere you thought you were safe. But Charles, he was sick. Confused. We all saw. What he wanted you to see, Mr. Bennet interjected. Every confused moment, every forgotten meeting, every signed document, all carefully orchestrated. I opened Father's journal to a marked page. He wrote here, they mistake kindness for weakness, patience for senility. They forget that the most dangerous predator is the one that teaches its prey to feel safe. The intercom buzzed. Ms. Harrison? The FBI's forensic team has found something in the sub-basement archives. The records room James ordered sealed after Father's confusion got worse? I smiled at Aunt Margaret's paling face. Amazing what people hide when they think no one's watching. You've destroyed us, she whispered. No, Aunt Margaret. You did that yourselves. I'm just finishing what Father started. Cleaning house. Mr. Bennet's phone chimed. The judge has signed the asset freeze orders. It's done. I picked up one of Father's vintage fountain pens, admiring how the light caught its gold nib. Actually, we're just beginning. Would you like to know what's in the safety deposit box Father left me? The one even James doesn't know about. Aunt Margaret's carefully maintained composure finally cracked. There's more. So much more, I replied, opening another file. Father always said the best lessons require complete understanding. Shall we continue your education,